Spoiler warning! This entire video is going to be me talking about the storyline of the Half-Life games, and more specifically, the story of Half-Life Alyx. You've been warned. Also, this video is going to be highly speculative. In other words, all the topics that will be discussed in this video, I will be mostly pulling out of my ass. A few months ago, I saw some posts and articles talking about how certain Half-Life insiders made some reports saying that apparently, Half-Life fans might be disappointed with the story direction for the upcoming Half-Life 3. And this isn't some one-off gaming rumor. It was picked up by a lot of high-profile video game articles and news posts. Even popular Half-Life community heads like Tyler McVicker and GameFollower picked up on this. In fact, just a few days ago, GameFollower was on a podcast, and in it, he talks about why exactly people might not enjoy or like the Half-Life 3 potential story. And he basically just goes on to say that it might be controversial. The entire podcast is in Russian, and I'm just going off of a Reddit post which translated it. If you understand Russian and or just really want to know more about it, I'll put the link in the video description below. Keep in mind, we're not talking about the game or its mechanics, or the fact that it hasn't come out in, 20 plus years. They specifically talk about the story, and that was already rather strange by itself, but at the time, I didn't pay it much attention. Fast forward to today. While perusing Reddit, like the loser that I am, I came across this post on the Half-Life subreddit. Full credit goes to RightClickX for the post, by the way. Link in the video description. Their post talks about the possibility of Vortigaunt betraying humanity in Half-Life 3. And that by itself is already a very interesting premise for Half-Life 3, or at the very least, a story element. You can read the rest of the post right here on screen, but the gist of it is that, yeah, the Vortigaunts were basically being pushed around by the Combine, they got to Zen, and then the humans started coming into Zen and then started experimenting upon them. The Vortigaunts were enslaved by the Nihilanth, and not to mention that Gordon kills a ton of them in Half-Life 1. Boom! Headshot! Boom! And this way to really rub in the PTSD for these guys. I'll also take this opportunity to shamelessly plug my Discord, go join it, and also watch my live streams. We have a lot of fun there. Big shout out to Ivan Space Biker, Not a Robot, Warboss Benny, The Animated Workshop, Slippy, Eton, and Leche the Cat for frequently tuning into my live streams. You guys are great. Oh, yeah, come on. I know you're back there. Come on. Oh my god. Yeah, these guys have been through a lot. And sure, they have their little Vortessence hive mind thing going on, and they've seemingly allied with humanity and forgiven Gordon, but what if that's all a facade? What if they're just putting on a face, biding their time, slowly learning about humanity, and then eventually taking over? It's a very interesting premise. And that made me wonder, what other possible story directions could Valve do with Half-Life 3 that might be seen as, at the very least, controversial, or at the very worst, outright disappointing? And full disclosure, I don't think this hypothetical story beat of Vortigaunt betraying humanity is bad. If anything, I kinda love it. If these Yoda-talking, headcrab-eating, three-arm-looking, sleazy bag motherfuckers end up betraying humanity, then guess what? This gorgeous Freeman skit wasn't a joke. This was real.
Oh my god, my manners. This is my Vortigaunt friend, Vorty. We met on a roller coaster 5 years ago. It was hilarious.
But then we realized that making fun of
Alright, and now we're here. Fate can be a wonderful thing. Wow, what are you doing, you sexy asshole? Not in his eye! Oh my god!
So while I can agree that people might think that Vortigaunt betraying humanity might be controversial, I don't think that's enough to really make these reports say that the game will be disappointing. I think there's other compounding story elements that will really beat down the player and really make them wonder, why the fuck did Valve write this story? So, let's talk about these other story hypotheticals, shall we? One final disclosure. All of the things that I will be talking about in this video from this point forward can, depending on who you are, be seen as somewhat disappointing. However, that being said, I don't think any one of these things, if they did add them to Half-Life 3, would be enough to ruin the game for a Half-Life fan. But, more than likely, the source of this predicted disappointment is probably a combination of many of these elements put together. In other words, one controversial story decision isn't enough to ruin Half-Life 3's story, but then you throw in another, and then another, and then another, and then suddenly the story of Half-Life 3 looks a lot more grim than it really should. You're basically this guy. Got that? Okay, cool. A genuine concern that people might have, and a story decision that I think is very likely to ruffle some feathers, will be regarding on how they handle G-Man, and of course how they tie the ending of Half-Life Alyx into Half-Life 3. Now, I could explain the story of Half-Life Alyx to you, but unfortunately, viewer retention is very important, and you motherfuckers keep clicking away for some reason. So feel free to pause the video and read the text. Go on, take your time. So, how's work? You been okay? Have you hit that subscribe button yet? Okay, you done? Good. Many people will agree that the main appeal about G-Man is his enigmatic nature. It's the fact that nobody knows who or even what he is. Hell, G-Man himself teases Alyx about his nature during his speech at the end of Half-Life Alyx.
So, who are you?
Perhaps what I am is not as important as what I can offer you in exchange for coming all this way.
So the conundrum is, if Valve decides to make Half-Life 3 and it will conclude the story of Half-Life as a whole, that would also mean that they would have to touch on G-Man. And honestly, no matter what they do, it's a lose-lose situation. People will be pissed if they try to explain G-Man's nature. If they tell the audience the hows, the whens, and the whys, it removes the mystery. The enigma is peeled away. Sure, we'll have closure, but sometimes that's less satisfying than just not knowing. But then again, people might also be pissed if they don't explain it. By allowing the mystery to be a mystery, some people just don't like that. It also doesn't help the fact that Half-Life's story has been going on for basically almost 30 years now. And G-Man has been probably the linchpin for this entire franchise, or at the very least served as its biggest mystery. And just not answering it at the end of Half-Life 3 is, it might be a tough pill to swallow for some people. And while we're on the topic of G-Man and mysteries, maybe in Half-Life 3, G-Man might try to do some sneaky shit. We know for a fact that he has Adrian Shepard in his back pocket. Some people might think that opposing force isn't canon, but whatever, just imagine this scenario with your mind's eye, okay? At some point in Half-Life 3, there's a boss fight. G-Man sent an assassin after you, and then when you see the assassin, for some reason he's wearing an HECU uniform. It's a tough fight. This guy, he's pretty good, but you manage to kill him. There's no name drop. The soldier doesn't even need to have a name tag. Just seeing the uniform would be a nice little touch and nod. However, I don't think people would be disappointed at a Adrian Shepard callback or Easter egg. If anything, people would actually be pretty hyped for that. Nah, if they wanted to play with your heartstrings, if they really wanted to test the player emotionally, then that would involve another G-Man employee. What if, later in the game, after the first boss fight, G-Man thinks that the first assassin wasn't enough? What if he sends another one? And what if G-Man forces his new associate, his new employee, Alyx, to fight Gordon? What if you are forced to kill Alyx? Now that would piss a lot of people off. Now, Valve might not go that far. After all, it seems like saving Alyx might actually be the big overarching goal for a potential Half-Life 3. But then, of course, Valve could just do that to other characters. You know, they might do a Last of Us or a Game of Thrones and just kill all the other fan-favorite characters. Barney is shot dead by remaining Combine soldiers. Dr. Magnuson is captured and executed. Dr. Kleiner is killed by wild headcrabs. Dog might die in an Iron Giant style sacrifice. G-Man might just do a Dr. Manhattan and just atomize Eli. There are many characters that Valve could just kill. It's rather funny how in the grand scheme of Valve games, and I'm talking about all of them, Valve isn't really known for doing dramatic character deaths. Sure, there are a few like Eli and maybe even a couple from Portal, I guess, but Valve isn't really known for dramatic character deaths. So what if they try to make up for lost time and just start killing, well, all of them in Half-Life 3? But then what if the story problems isn't even related to the characters? What if it's something regarding the ending? What if the ending revolves around a total reset or a time loop? Imagine this. What if at the end of Half-Life 3, Gordon and his friends beat the G-Man and his employers, and then some time fuckery happens, and then suddenly there's a fade to black, and just as the game ends, it fades back in, and then suddenly the player is back on the tram ride in Half-Life 1 back in Black Mesa. They could probably try to explain it away, like, I don't know, killing G-Man is bad for the universe and it'll cause, like, I don't know, a paradox and everything resets. I don't know. All I know is if it involves any sort of time fuckery, people probably won't be happy about that. And we already know that there's gonna be time fuckery, or at the very least multiverse fuckery, because of the precedent that Half-Life Alyx sets. For the time being, it seems like the only person who can fuck with the timeline is G-Man, but I don't know. All the characters in Half-Life are engineers and doctors. If they wanted to make a multiverse time machine, kind of like Tony Stark in Avengers Endgame, they absolutely could. Maybe the storyline for Half-Life 3 might revolve the remaining Resistance members traveling back to the Black Mesa facility, now taken over by Zen Overgrowth, and trying to restart the Resonance Cascade, hoping to reverse all of this from happening in the first place. I don't know. But anytime that a story tries to include time as a story element, it's a genie that you can't put back in the bottle. And Valve either has to approach this with masterful writing, because anything revolving time travel and multiverse stuff and time loops and timelines, it's a very slippery slope. And because of most comic book movies nowadays, people are just kind of fatigued with this kind of writing. Shit. Hell, let's even get wackier with it. What if the problem isn't even the story? What if the problem is how the story is told? What if suddenly in Half-Life 3 they just started adding cutscenes to the game? Just straight up unskippable cutscenes with like Forspoken dialogue.
I just move shit with my freaking
What if some of the decisions with the characters just are questionable? Imagine if Dog was your companion for the entire journey. Except this time, he talks now, and he doesn't stop talking. I don't know, he can be voiced by James Corden or something. God, wouldn't that be terrible? Actually, let's even take it a step further. What if Gordon just talks? That's it. He just talks. The game is an 11 out of 10, the best masterpiece that Valve has ever made. All other games are gonna start modeling themselves after Half-Life 3. Except Gordon talks now, so 0 out of 10. Voiced by Troy Baker, because of course he is. Everybody's voiced by Troy Baker. I'm voiced by Troy Baker. At this point, that's a lot of doomer statements. But what if the simplest explanation is the real one? You know, Occam's razor. What if Half-Life 3's story and conclusion is just not good? Not satisfying. That's it. There's no deeper meaning, there's no deeper breakdown. What if Valve wrote a story, they tried their best, and the majority of Half-Life fans just don't think it was a good story? That's unlikely, but it could happen. Therein lies the problem. All these rumors, all these speculation about Half-Life's story and how it could end. That just goes to show how passionate this community is. We want to know how our favorite gaming trilogy ends. And we already know for a fact that no matter how Valve decides to make the story of Half-Life 3, video essayists on YouTube are still going to make 3-hour reviews on this game. I'm looking at you, Triforce Liam, Noah Cadworld Gervais, Kelsky, and that Trav guy. You guys are great, by the way. I watch all your content. I'll finish this video with this statement. At the end of the day, no matter what happens with any potential disappointing story elements in Half-Life 3, the only true disappointing thing would be Valve not releasing Half-Life 3 at all. And after 20 plus years, I'm hoping that disappointment might finally be alleviated. But what do you think, Internet Wanderer? What story elements do you think that they could potentially fuck up in this sequel, huh? Do you agree with any of the points that I said here? Comment your own thoughts down below. If you have any theories as to what could potentially be happening in the Half-Life 3 story, I would love to know. Anyway, that's gonna be it from me, Internet Wanderer. Thanks for watching. Do the YouTube things. Also, join the Discord. Bye!